had the most awkward threesome with one of my good friends, and it accidentally happened, and I'll blame drugs. I was passing up this guy who I had been seeing to her because she was like, I want someone who a consistent partner. And I was like, well, I know this guy. He's like a total bachelor. He's like reliable in all of the ways.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, it's kind of awkward if I just like go, will you hang out with us? Like they kiss. And then there was a point when I was like, I feel like I should leave, but I'm on shrooms. And I stayed and then I like got involved. But my friend and I never touched.
Oh, that makes it normal.
And so it was like, there was a point afterwards. It was like there was one point when it was like, I don't want to get too graphic because like, you know, my good Christian family might listen to this. But there was one point afterwards where I was like, I don't know if she will ever speak to me again because I don't know how that's happened. But the next day I was like, are we good? She's like, yeah, see you at yoga. Let's never talk about this.
But first, a word from our sponsors.
The Man Whore Podcast is sponsored by Audio Desires, an erotic audio platform dedicated to giving you the best oral sex you can have. With hundreds of sexy stories in 3 different languages and a sleek, user-friendly design, Audio Desires is the right fit to get you in the mood. Enjoy 50% off an annual membership or 20% off a monthly membership when you use promo code MANWHORE at audiodesires.com. Beducated.com teaches you real sex techniques using real people, not just diagrams and pussy puppets. Get 70% off an annual membership with code MANWHORE at beducated.com. That's code MANWHORE at beducated.com. Or click the link in the show notes. Now let's get to the show.
Welcome to the Man Whore Podcast.
Shout out to all the hopeless romantics and desirable deviants out there. This is Billy Presida, and you are listening to the Man Whore Podcast. Hey, welcome to the show. I got another sex-positive conversation for you this week. My guest today is Kate Robards. Very funny comedian. We had a really fun conversation. I think she's got a very relatable story for a lot of y'all out there who have experimented with open relationships. And we're also going to figure out if you should have threesomes with your friends. I'm very excited to share that conversation in a little bit. The gig upstate with Andrea Allen went well. That was, I think, a surprise to both of us. Andrea and I spent a whole lot of time in a car together. It was because we drove through a blizzard against the advice of counsel. We we drove like 8.5 hours up to the Canadian border to a veterans hall that had signs plastered all over the place. No foul language allowed. And it was like, no one told us we had to work clean. Oh shit. But then the producer who was emceeing the event, he got up and he opened with a joke about having a 16-inch dick, which I promise you he does not. But we heard him say dick multiple times, and just Andrea and I looked at each other like, oh, we're going to be good. Whew, fine. Yeah, we can talk about cum. If you tell us we can't talk about cum, I mean, that does take a good chunk out of both of our acts, and we had to fill an hour and a half together. So very relieved, you know. It's you go up to a place like an upstate New York, and you just don't know how raw you can get. But it was a good crowd, had fun. And then the plan was, you know, we tried to find a couch to crash on, like somewhere between Albany and the gig, and we failed with that. And then we figured we'll just bite the bullet. We'll do the safe and responsible thing, and we'll drive a couple hours, get a motel room, and drive the rest of the way back in the morning. But show's done. It's like 10:30. I think we got out of there by like 11, and we looked at each other like, we're not going to do the safe and responsible thing. I looked at her and I was like, yo, I think we can do it. And by we, I mean me. Andrea does not know how to operate a vehicle. So she does not have a license. This is all on me. She is the moral support and DJ in the car. But I was like, I think I can do it. And shout out to 5 Hour Energy. Oh my, I took one of their extra strength shots. This is not a paid plug, but I took one of their shots at like 11:30 and I powered through 6 hours. I took a 5 Hour Energy shot. I got 6 hours out of it. That was amazing. Andrea fell asleep around 2:30 in the morning. I was just kind of all on my own. She woke up at the GW bridge and she's like, oh my God, we didn't die. What she doesn't know is that while she was asleep, we definitely almost had at least one encounter with the snow. Kind of the problem driving a Toyota Camry through a blizzard is it's a Toyota Camry in a blizzard. Not the safest thing to do, but you know what? Hey, we pump those brakes, we stay steady, we don't panic, and we get through the ice. I was really nervous because I was like, if we crashed and died, I felt like more people in the comedy community would be mad at me because I killed Andrea Allen. Like I'd be dead too, but the memorial would be for her. She's very popular around here. And so I was like, I can't take away their cum queen. I got to get Andrea back safe. She is precious cargo. But again, thanks to 5 Hour Energy Shot getting me through the drive. Folks, before I get to this week's guest, Kate Robards, sometimes I get listener questions that I'm not qualified to answer. And by some, I mean like most questions I'm not qualified to answer. But really the only thing you need to give advice is to be asked for advice, right? I'm not an expert. I'm just a comedian with a fuck show. But y'all will be like, oh, how do I organize a gangbang? And I'm like, well, I got experience with that. I can help. But sometimes I can't. I'm starting to bring in friends of the pod who are more expert than I am. A few weeks ago, we had on Dr. David Lay, talked about narcissistic boss someone was having an affair with. And I'm bringing back another past guest of the show, Dr. Ina Park, to help me with a listener question about yeast infections and UTIs, maybe debunking or confirming a myth or two. You may remember Dr. Ina Park. She was on the show back on episode 380. She has a book out called Strange Bedfellows, Adventures in the Science, History, and Surprising Secrets of STDs. So if you find her information useful, you should go get her book, learn even more. All right, everybody. I am back with Dr. Ina Park, the author of Strange Bedfellows, Adventures in the Science, History, and Surprising Secrets of STDs. She was on the podcast, I believe, last year, and I want to welcome back to help me with this question, Dr. Ina Park. Hello.
Hi, Billy.
Thanks for coming back to help out. I'm in a mood right now these days where I get a listener question that I am not qualified to answer. Some would argue I'm not qualified to answer really any listener questions that have nothing to do with glory holes, So I'm starting to bring in past guests who I think can help out.
Great. And I'm happy to oblige at any time.
Yeah. I get this listener email and she writes in, hi, I am fed up with me and my female friends getting UTIs left and right, and none of the guys we fuck seem to get them too. What gives?
Yep.
Also, I've heard a lot of things about, how to prevent UTIs, like peeing immediately after sex. Are these suggestions real, or are they old wives' tales? And while you're at it, what's up with yeast infections?
Oh, right. Okay. Well, can I start with the UTI thing first, Billy?
Please.
Because for anyone who's having penis and vagina sex, like this is real and it's something that folks have to deal with. And the difference is twofold. So first of all, if we think about the length of the urethra, so it's the distance between the bladder and the opening where you pee, right? That is much shorter on a female-bodied person than it is on someone with a penis. Even when there's thrusting happening, you don't propel a lot of bacteria backwards into the urethra in a guy. I mean, a little bit can happen, obviously, because that's how guys get chlamydia and gonorrhea. But for women or folks with a vagina, the urethra is so short that when thrusting happens, all the bacteria in the area. So there's bacteria from the vagina, there's skin bacteria, and then sometimes, bacteria from your anus make it up into that area because it's all wet and stuff is happening, right? So,
is that the medical term for it? Stuff is happening,
yes. But you can imagine, Billy, let's say thrusting is happening, right? And the vagina and the urethra are right next to each other. So that thrusting motion is actually pushing bacteria up into the urethra and up into the bladder. So
Right.
that's why it's so easy. It's just so easy for someone with a vagina to get a UTI when they're having penis and vagina sex.
What is a UTI?
It just means it's a urinary tract infection, and that means any bacteria that go up there and start to grow can actually grow to these high numbers and then start to cause symptoms like pain, bleeding. You can have, pus in your urine. So, and it can be very, very subtle, and it can also be dramatic where people are literally pissing blood. To be frank.
And this can get caused by bacteria that's just like naturally in the penis.
Well, not in the penis, but it's actually bacteria that
From anything?
that you are living on your skin already, Billy, or that are in the anal region of the of the person that's the receptive partner, right? Or vaginal bacteria.
Yeah.
Any of those bacteria can actually be thrust into the bladder and can start to grow out of control, which is why the whole peeing after sex thing is real. I mean, people say that, and I have said that to many patients, and I have to say, it really does help. It doesn't help everybody, but if you are able to get up out of bed or wherever you had sex, go pee immediately after, that can help. And then some people also, up the ante a little bit, and they actually hop into the shower or the bathtub and just rinse the whole area out to rinse bacteria off. And I don't know that's a little bit more extreme. And some people who have suffered a lot of UTIs will both pee and rinse afterwards. But I say at a minimum, it's great for everyone to pee immediately, after sex, penis and vagina sex.
Is the reason the shower is not like you're not so sure about because it's not like you can really like scrub your urethra specifically, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But what I do think it does do is that, like, if there's bacteria from him, or bacteria from her, and there's semen around and whatever. And, if it's a little irritated down there anyway, Billy, and then you rinse all the bacteria off, that perhaps that reduces the amount of, bacteria that's down there, and maybe it would, irritate it less. But yeah, you're right. You're not taking a little toothbrush or scrubber brush and getting into the urethra when you're there. You're just rinsing off sort of what was already there. But I actually think peeing, which flushes out the urethra, is the best sort of preventive method there.
It seems like if you have a vagina, there's always going to be this risk. Is there like really no avoiding that? Condoms doesn't help.
Yeah, that's the thing is, well, condoms will protect you from, like, let's say he's got chlamydia or gonorrhea or some other STI inside his urethra. So the condoms are great for that, but they don't stop the fact that you have all these bacteria on your skin, vagina, and anal area. You know what I mean? Those can get in there even if he's wearing a condom.
So your own bacteria
It's
can
your
fuck
own
you up.
Yes.
Wow.
It is your own bacteria. It's often not your partner's bacteria. It's often your own bacteria that are getting into your own urinary tract.
So does this also count? Like, does peeing after, is that also for like if you dildo yourself? Like, should you also pee when you're done? Because like you're.
Yeah. I think it's a trial and error thing, as Billy, with everything, like in your sex life, right? You do things and you see what works for you and what doesn't. And so if you're somebody who some people get UTIs even if they dildo themselves, and some people really only get them for partnered sex because when people, use a dildo, they sometimes are not quite as vigorous as they are when they're having partnered sex. So
that wrist can get tired.
Yeah, exactly. And then some people, as they're like sort of vaginal ecosystem, and their whole system is just so delicate that like they do anything and they just get tipped over into having a UTI. So people who do that are going to be wanting to pee after they use a dildo, after they have partnered sex. And then some people never have to pee after sex and they never get a UTI. So there's just a huge range of experience and sort of susceptibility to getting a UTI after having sex. Can we talk about yeast also, Billy?
Please, I was going to say, and then what's the deal with the yeast infections?
Yeah. So, yeast actually live both, on folks of all genders may have some yeast just sort of hanging out. Okay. And we call it, they call it sort of a colonizer, meaning it just sort of hangs out there. It doesn't cause a problem. And so what happens for some people is that—
Real Christopher Columbus on my crotch.
I know. I don't like that word, but it's sort of the medical microbiologic term that they use for it. But so what happens is when someone gets a yeast infection, the yeast that were already there start to grow out of control. So it's like a balance. You have a balance. You always have a little bit of yeast there, but if it starts to grow out of control, then you get a full-blown yeast infection and you get a discharge. It's itchy. It gets really irritated. It can look almost like a thick white pasty cottage cheesy kind of thing. And it's pain, and it's so painful, Billy. It's really irritating. And if you try to have, if you have a vagina and then you actually try to put a penis in there or anything in there during that time, even a tampon can hurt. Like it's not. It can be very. It can really be like inflammatory. It can be painful. So you have to usually take some sort of medication to get the balance off, kill the yeast, put them under control. So there's both oral medication and there's also creams that you can insert inside the vagina that will take care of that. But guys can also, folks with a penis can also get yeast infections. It doesn't happen to guys who are circumcised that much, but the uncut guys under the foreskin, yeah. So if you don't have your foreskin, that's one less thing you have to worry about. But if you have your foreskin, the uncut guys underneath the foreskin, they can also actually get a yeast infection. It's called balanitis. It's a different, they have a special word just for the yeast infection under the, around the head of the penis, under the foreskin.
Wow, men just always want their own thing. Why can't we get a special term for our yeast infections? Why can't we have like a male history month? It's just
I know.
Exhausting.
I know. So women, they call it vaginitis, and for guys, they call it balanitis. But for a guy, you're obviously, most of the time you're just taking a cream and rubbing it on the head of the penis, a couple times a day, and that usually takes care of it. So.
And just to clarify for people listening, it's like you wouldn't consider a yeast infection or UTI an STI.
No,
right?
Not at all. I mean, the thing is that they can happen with sex, but a yeast infection especially can just happen to folks randomly, just because the balance gets off there. Like even if somebody wears like tight pants for too long, that can be enough to create the environment that caused the yeast to grow out of control. So again,
who would have thought Gen Z was right about skinny jeans?
Exactly. And so the thing is that, you have to see how delicate is your vagina or your penis, right? Like some guys also who are not having partnered sex, but like, for example, they're uncut, so they have a foreskin. They just show up and they're like, what the hell? Like, why do I have yeast on my penis? I didn't do anything. And I said, yeah, you just, sorry. They have to be really vigilant about keeping that area dry. And some guys who have partnered sex, with someone with a vagina, it's all moist and wet down there. So some guys have to rinse off their penis actually after sex and then dry it off so that the yeast don't start to grow out of control. So you got to learn how to care for your genitals, keep them happy, Billy. And that's a process of trial and error through our lives.
Keep your genitals happy. Everyone,
Yes.
Dr. Ina Park, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people go to find you, to get your book?
Yeah, they can come to Instagram. The links to buy the book are in my bio. It's Ina Park MD, so INAPARK MD, or my website, inapark.net, or on Twitter at Ina Park MD.
Fantastic. Thanks again so much. And why don't you go ahead and say goodbye to everybody?
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening to the podcast.
Again, the book is Strange Bedfellows, Adventures in the Science, History, and Surprising Secrets of STDs. I will have a link in the show notes. Thanks again to Ina for coming on and helping us out. Before I get to Kate Robards, let's just do a real quick fan whore appreciation moment. Okay, this is the part of the podcast where I like to give a thank you, because these people, they deserve thank yous. If you've never been able to throw a few shekels, a few bucks my way, hey, that is fine. That's okay. It is a free podcast. I know. But Fan Whore Nation is comprised of the all-stars. Fan Whore Nation has the whoreheads who keep this podcast going. They keep the lights on over my head, and they keep the condoms securely on my cock by putting their credit cards down and letting me have a career. So I like to give special thank yous to each and every one of them. Today I got a couple I want to shout out. First I want to shout out to Venus Cuckoldress. Y'all remember Venus? She's past guest of the pod. How much fun did she have on the show? She joined the Patreon. Isn't that grand? Thank you to the queen of the Canadian unicorns. I appreciate your support. And a big shout out to Bryant. Hey, Bryant. Don't know your name. Don't know who you are. Really can't seem to find anything about you, but I do love your sister Lane's work. I hope she keeps it going, and I want to thank you for supporting the show. And you too can become a member today, enjoy a slew of great rewards, and earn my undying gratitude. I fucking love Fan Whore Nation. I love my Patreon peeps. Truly, y'all could unionize against me and I would buckle right away. We wouldn't even get into like tough negotiations. I'd just be like, what do you need? I want to give it to you, because I very much appreciate y'all. Become a member today. Support the whore you love at patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. That's Patreon, patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. Now for this week's guest, Kate Robards. Kate is a very funny comedian. It was great to get to know her. She has a very relatable story about what kind of sounds like, you know, what Dan Savage calls PUDs, poly under duress. I mean, it's a little bit of, you know, her path from monogamy to poly under duress to a more ethical and securely attached non-monogamy. I think you're going to like this one a lot. You may even find some answers for yourself in our conversation. Let's go have a chat. No ads today with Kate Robards.
And you say that up front. Hey, good to see you again. It's been 12 years, but something you should know about me is that if you do want this, you know, you got to share it, right? That's it was,
you know, it's in my bio. I always put that right up top.
What does it say exactly?
I don't know what it said at the time, but something along the lines just says like non-monogamous. Mm-hmm. I talk about sex. I kind of give all the things up front that you need that could be deal breakers. I'm non-monogamous. I talk about sex for a living. I have an OnlyFans. Like things like this that could be, you know, I'm a comic. That's a very reasonable deal breaker for most people, right?
Is it?
Is it? I think so. It's none of us should date. We should only basically date each other because we should only have to put up with each other. I feel like
I refuse to date comics, but I also feel like so many people I date are like, I thought about doing comedy, and I'm like, but you're too much of a coward.
Oh, what kind of femdom shit is that?
Speaking of femdom, I'm so into that. I just found out because I'm like mean. I made a man cry today.
Oh my God.
And which means I just got more powerful.
This is wild because I did not. I read you as a nice
That's what
Southern
I'm saying.
girl.
And that's kind of my thing is that like I always thought I was a nice Southern girl, but I like being mean to boys and they love it. And my friend was telling me about what even a femdom is, and it's like I'm like I had no idea. I'm like I think I am one. Like
now, do you like to be mean like you want to be degrading, or do you like to be mean like bratty? Oh God, that's the worst of the doms. Oh,
I mean, I'm like classic little sister energy, you know. Like I like had an older brother. I was always following him and his friends around. So one of the guys that I have been seeing recently, he was telling me about how he was dating this girl who was like a sugar baby. And I'm not, I always say, you know, I'm not a sugar baby because I'm too dumb. I fuck for free, you know? But he was like, oh yeah, you know, her like she femdoms, which is different from femdom. Oh,
femdoming is the best
financial
gig I ever
domination.
Had. It is so good.
So
Highly
I
recommend.
had never heard of it before. Do you want to like explain it to people?
Oh, they're aware.
They're
I mean, one
aware.
of them was my Fin sub for a hot minute,
Oh
but it's
my
like, yeah,
gosh.
you just tell people like, fuck you, pay me, and then they give you money, and then they jerk off about it. It's great.
Oh my gosh. So I am a divorcee.
Okay.
And I was in this like polyamorous marriage that, you know, went terribly wrong. But
Comedian Kate Robards just like really slipping in the conceit
Just
of
casual.
the episode right there.
But
Very nice.
I'm happy for them because we are like third, our polyamorous partner, our like paramour or whatever. They're now married.
Okay.
So that's like a fun little twist. And she goes to Yale.
Was she the Findom?
No,
Oh.
but in the end of our relationship, the only thing I had control, like I was like, I didn't want to have sex with him, but I was like spending so much of his money, and he's like, I really wish you wouldn't spend this money. Like you spent a lot of money. I'm like, oh really? You wish I wouldn't fucking spend your money? I'm like, I bet you wish that. You know, I bet. Like, and I was so mean and cruel about it, and he would like beg me to spend less. I was like, I think I kind of did that with my ex-husband.
Oh my
I'm like,
gosh.
I'm going to Budapest with my girlfriends, and we're charging this on your credit card.
And what did he say to that?
He's like, no, please don't.
Please, no, don't. Wow, that's exactly what's happening. I think
I just
you
learned
are
about
doing
this
it.
though. Yeah. Well, I'm not as successfully as I would like because this guy was telling me his ex-girlfriend was going to furnish his apartment because she's a findom. And I was like, what happened? Why don't you have furniture? He said, well, I broke up with her before. I was like, loser, you loser. And also, can she like call me and teach me
Just
everything?
when you tweet, say like, I wish someone would, buy me something. Just like put hashtag Findom, hashtag PayPig. Someone will slide into your DM. Yeah, PayPig's an
Okay,
easy
so
one.
whoever's listening to this, hashtag Findom, hashtag PayPig.
I was like, I think you have to tweet it. I don't know if you can say it on a podcast,
Okay.
but it's worth trying.
You
We'll
never
see if
know.
anyone slides in and says like, what's your Venmo, mistress?
At Catherine-Robards. I mean, I had a single mom, and she was like, my dad drug her through the mud.
Okay.
So she was like his findom, and she had no money. And she like paid his child support and bought him clothes. And so I think like, I was like, oh, he definitely was winning in that situation. So I just like, the idea of findoming is like, oh, that person's winning.
Oh yeah, I think it's the best of the sex work because you also don't even have to touch anybody.
Hello. Hey, there's somebody drilling.
Yeah, what's going?
What kind of weird vibrator?
I mean, because I have one of those weird vibrators that shakes the entire building, but that's not what it sounds like. That is not a motor bunny, promo code manwhore, but I think we'll be all right. I don't think it's going to show up and drown out the voice of my guest, Kate Robards,
Hey, y'all.
fellow comic, the gal behind the one-woman show, Polyshamery, which I found almost offensive.
So many people in the poly community were so upset.
Were they?
Upset. Because they're like, there's already enough bad rep on it. Like, how dare you? But like, I think for me, polyshamery, it was like this one experience of being married and in this polyamorous relationship.
Yeah.
It was not right. Like I read The Ethical Slut and The Polyamorous Next Door, and I was like living in the Bay Area. So I felt like it was very, normalized there. But it was literally about this bad scenario. But the sham for me was always the root of shame, and how and it just, I thought it was a cute title, but like I grew up in such a conservative Christian area where like, people, you just were traditional and you cheated on each other.
Yeah, I think that one of the jokes I do is like, I explained non-monogamy to my girlfriend. It was new for her. Hey, we're going to talk to each other. We're going to have sex with other people. We're going to communicate. We're going to set our own rules. And she's like, I mean, okay, but it really takes the fun out of the cheating. Like that's the deceit is what the fun part is. What was the downfall of this sham of a marriage?
Well, I mean, I think it's a lot of things. I was young when I got married, but I also think like I didn't understand. I'm still dealing with I have corrected some of my language, but I'm still dealing with like a bunch of residual stuff from childhood. And I think the whole communication thing is an issue for a lot of people, and figuring out that. And I think sometimes like if I was a little older and I knew what I knew now, I would be able to handle it. But the jealousy and the like, I shut down in some ways my ability to like be receptive. And there was, a lot of deceit, and it wasn't like as open. And that's why I think some people I know who are in polyamorous relationships or ethically non-monogamous, they do have different rules where it's like kind of like a don't ask, don't tell policy. And, or like there's one of my friends who's in a very successful partnership. They have a thing where he travels a lot for work, and when they're not together, they both like, of course they communicate, but he doesn't need to say everyone he's with.
Yeah.
It's like they have their rules of like a condom contract and like condom compact, all of these things.
When someone's away, that's the time to play with others or something like that.
And then they prioritize each other above all other relationships.
Yeah.
And so I think like, okay, that really works for them. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I think it's finding something that works for both parties, right?
Yeah. I think my whole thing is that like a relationship should be whatever like the 2 or 3 or 4 or 12 people want the one relationship to be. Right? Like we should make our own rules. Like relationships should be customizable. And like once I view monogamy as like a fixed point at the end of a spectrum. So like if you're a couple who has like an annual threesome for your anniversary, like guess what? You're not monogamous either. Welcome to the club, because everything short of monogamy is just like whatever, like there's infinite ways to do it. And you get to make whatever rules you want to make anals your special hole for each other. You can do that. That's why I think it's great. I think you make whatever rules you want. What kind of rules did y'all have?
It started off as like someone for him someone for
It
me.
started monogamously though, right?
It started super traditional, like we were monogamous, but like someone for him, someone for me, and not necessarily someone for us to share.
Okay.
But if that happened, great, like cool. But it
Only
actually
one somebody else for each at a time?
Well, and I think it was always like, it was the hypothetical ideal of like, we don't believe we're getting married. We're both young. We really don't believe. Well, I think when we did get married, we thought we would be with each other forever. And it's like, long distance, you're together for years, and you look other places. But I think the entree, one of my jokes was like, do you know what polyamory is? Then I explain it. And then it's like, do you know what a threesome is? Everybody knows what, menage a trois, whatever. And I'm like, oh, it's the polyamory gateway drug.
It is.
It is.
It very much
and so
is.
that was like our kind of thing, was like, we were always both open to this threesome idea. And we had this really bad experience where we were like on the apps, and of course, I feel like as the woman, I was doing all the groundwork, because I feel like men are like, I'm going to scare them off. And now at this point, I'm like, if you can't do the legwork to like get this threesome, because I've had to like orchestrate this too many times for men. I put all this legwork into it. We found this chick. She was beautiful, had been talking to her for a long time. And then we were going to like wine and dine her. She seemed so cool. And then the night of, and I have to make sure I'm not like transphobic, because it wasn't a trans person. The she was a he. Okay. And it wasn't a trans person. It was just a guy who's like, actually, I'm a guy and I do this to get off.
Oh, he catfished?
He was I was totally catfished.
I was
Threesome catfished, and all this work had gone into it. We're like literally getting stood up for dinner. And that was the point.
Oh, he didn't show up either.
No.
Oh.
And so that was the point when I was like, Josh, you got to, because I'm busy. I'm like, you got to put, oh, that's my ex's name.
Sure.
You got to put all the work into this, because what a waste of time. But now the new reason that I'm really reluctant to do like a coordinating with a woman is like, in our current culture, right? Like we're in a Me Too, post Me Too era. And with the whole Ghislaine thing, Ghislaine Maxwell, where she was like, grooming these women, these young women or whatever.
I mean, she was grooming underage women.
She was, but at the same time, I'm like, I can't be Ghislaining people, right? I can't, because like the guys that want to have threesomes are all like, oh, that chick is like your 22-year-old friend is so hot, your 21-year-old friend is so hot. I'm like, I know that I could have a threesome with her. I don't know if she wants your ugly ass, okay? And like, I'm not going to be the facilitator for that. You have to ask for consent. I'm not going to be your bait. I'm not going to be your lure. Like, you have to vibe it out with this person, because I'm like, I'm pretty confident like they'd be down for me.
Sure, but it's good. It's helpful.
I'm not going to endorse. I'm not going to sign off on it. You got to do your own work.
I mean, it depends on like how you go. If it has to do with like a friend who already exists, one, if they're only ever pointing out like your 21, 22-year-old friends, it's a little red flaggy to me, right? Right. If they're never into your 31-year-old friend, I'm like, what's that about?
No, totally.
But if it's like a friend thing and it's like, well, oh gosh, I'd love to have a threesome with your friend Cheryl. What about you? Yeah. It's good if you like offer the floater, because otherwise it looks circumventy, like he's trying to get around you to get to her. At least if you've brought it up to her, like, hey, would you be interested? Maybe. Yeah.
I mean,
then you can like connect the two and let them work that out.
I pretty much told all of my friends, like, I'm accepting headshots, resumes. Like, let me know if you're interested in a cuddle puddle orgy weekend. Like, I think sex parties are lame at this point.
You like having threesomes with your friends?
I wouldn't say I like it, but like, it has happened. Like, it's funny because it's not funny, but I was dating a 26-year-old guy who's from New York, who like went to Oberlin and then came back to New York City. And he was just, his mentality was so different, because he's slept with literally all of his friends, like men and women.
Okay.
And I was just like, huh? Because that's like so not my experience growing up. It's like if you have sex with someone, you're a whore. Like, you're supposed to save yourself for marriage. And then if you do have sex with someone, it should be because you believe you're going to marry that person. And a lot of people do, right?
Yeah.
But so this idea of like, he was just like, oh yeah, all my friends sleep together. I was like, what kind of New York City, like, intellectual shit is this? You know,
Yeah.
I had the most awkward with threesome with one of my good friends, and it accidentally happened, and I'll blame drugs.
Okay.
But I was like passing off this guy who I had been
Christians
seeing.
love blaming things besides themselves for their own
Honestly,
desires.
truly. I was passing off this guy who I had been seeing to her because she was like, I want someone who I can just like, you know, everyone I go out with, they just want to hook up for a month and they never want to see me again. She's like, I just want to like have sex with someone, right? Like I don't even need to consistently, like a consistent partner. And I was like, well, I know this guy. He's like a total bachelor. He's like reliable in all of the ways. And she was like, well, it's kind of awkward if I just like go, will you hang out with us for the first time?
Before I fuck was this a boyfriend or a fuck buddy of yours?
First of all, I wouldn't say fuck buddy. I would say compartmentalized sexual partner.
Oh, wow. Okay, now who's using
That my therapist
long
literally
language?
because I like grew up so Christian that I was like in my head I'm like, if I have sex with someone I have to love them.
Yeah.
Because that makes like Jesus forgive me.
And it's like the more syllables you put in the phrase, the less like accountable you are to the sex you're having with them.
Right. Well, she was literally like, learn to have compartmentalized sex because I'm like I have sex with someone and I'm like, do you love me? I love you. Like it's a lot. Like it was a lot. And this was coming out of my divorce and I was just like, oh, we're in love. Like I gave you my vagine. Like that means that like something, right? Like God hath ordained our connection.
If
like,
we have good sex and you make me laugh, like why wouldn't we do this?
we know each other biblically, like we're getting married. And anyway, I was working to separate this. And so my therapist was literally like, you need to learn how to have compartmentalized sex. And I was like, what? Like, she's like, you need to learn how to have sex without expectations that like all of these needs that you usually rely on a partner to fulfill, you need to fulfill those for yourself and let them fulfill like the sex need. And you also need to fulfill your own sexual needs. Anyway, so I had been having sex with this guy for way too long, not too long, and my therapist was kind of like, you did the task. You've checked that box. You're doing great. Like you can let him go. And anyway, he was still around, and like if I wasn't seeing anyone,
you're doing like a good deed and being like, okay, I'm going to pass this good dick off to my friend.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks for understanding. So we go over whatever, and they end up like they kiss, and then there was a point when I was like, I feel like I should leave, but I'm on shrooms, and I like been. I was like, and I stayed, and I like got involved, but my friend and I never touched.
Oh, that makes it normal.
And so it was like there was a point afterwards. It was like there was one point when it was like, I don't want to get too graphic because like, you know, my good Christian family might listen to this. But there was one point afterwards where I was like, I don't know if she will ever speak to me again because I don't know how that's happened. But I was like, are we good? Like the next day I was like, are we good? She's like, yeah, see you at yoga. Let's never talk about this.
What,
ever.
did your like lips touch when she went from balls to shaft and you went shaft to balls and it was weird?
No, it was literally.
That the weird part for you too?
No. It was literally like he was going down on, she was like up on this thing. He was going down on her.
Okay.
And then she was like on a couch. He's going down on her. And then he had like a boner, obviously. And I was like, you should leave or have sex with this man. And I'm going to leave it up to the imagination to what happened. Great. But it was like, it was really funny to me. Like we're really good friends. And I was like, oh, is this going to be weird? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like the only friend I've had sex with. And it was the least, like for the most part, when I have sex with someone or like a relationship with them, I hate them afterwards. No, I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. No, I don't have sex with my friends. I don't.
That's okay. No one's making you. I think
stop trying to tell. No,
the whole point of all this is to fuck who you want or don't, and don't who you don't.
But I just think it's so fascinating with all of these friend groups that have had sex together, and it's something I'm very open to. Like a lot of my friends are ethically non-monogamous and very open about it. These friends are mostly in the Bay Area, but I'm meeting more people in New York who are doing this. And I always remind people, I'm like, you know, The Bachelor is just polyamory brought to you by ABC, you know, because they're literally hooking up with all of these people. And it's like actually less outside the box than you would think. And people in New York are always dating multiple people
Yeah.
and hooking up with multiple people.
I always hear this like, well, in New York, people date multiple people. It's like, no, we just have more people here and we can. Like, if you were in Madison, Ohio and could go on 5 dates in a week, like you would. You just can't. I mean, I know one woman in Ohio who like, she writes into me always frustrated because like every guy she sets something up with cancels right away. And then it takes her forever even to match with somebody because there's nobody there. Like, that's why, you know?
And we don't suffer options.
Well,
We don't lack for options.
So your former marriage. I'm curious when you reach out and I was looking into your stuff. I was like, this plays interestingly into my current situation with Wallet Note Lady. And
So sweet.
What are benefits of monogamy to you?
I think it can be really beautiful. For the record, I will say since my divorce, the only time that I was in this monogamous relationship was during the pandemic. And so I wonder, I'm sure that influenced it. And I dated him for longer, but it was like literally I was more afraid of COVID than I was of an STD.
Sure. But the ex-husband, that started off monogamously as well. You've done monogamy.
And it was beautiful. And it was for me, the beauty of monogamy is that there's this person, which is, and I want to say, I understand it's not exclusive for monogamy, but there's this person who cares about you and your well-being in all of the ways. And you get, especially being married, you get the perks of all of their family. If they come from my ex had a way better family than I did. Okay. He had this like nuclear traditional family. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is what I've always wanted. And, it just felt really secure. And once again, I think that you can have that in non-monogamous ways. But I think from a like truly open-minded standpoint, I just don't think that it is possible. I really don't believe that monogamy is possible. My father always had
you said that monogamy is not possible.
I don't think monogamy is like realistic. I think we live, I think like we do live way longer now than we ever have before. And it's like looking into, I'm sure you know all this, but like the penis is shaped like a shovel to scoop out competitor sperm, Yeah.
Why is the penis shaped like that by Jessica Baring? Yeah.
That's amazing. It's like there's so many reasons, and it's like may the strongest sperm win. And from
which is funny because if you get them pregnant, for some people, not getting them pregnant is the winning. It's like, you know what, let some other sperm be the winner. I'm happy winning without the kid.
But going back to my relationship, we had a great couple of years in the beginning. For me, at least. I'm going to use my I statements. We met on OkCupid. Okay. Because that was trendier. I mean, people still use that. Yeah. I was working living in like a city for 3.5 months, pretty much, around the world. I was a nanny for this Grammy Award-winning opera singer. And it was, I graduated during a recession, undergrad. And I would line up dates on these cities just to like kind of get to know things. He was my first date in DC. And I immediately, it was like an 8-hour date and it was just so amazing. And he was so rich.
You were talking before, like, you get the benefits of their family, and you were like, they have a really nice family.
They have a lot. They have family money. No, he was like in law school. It was a really dope situation. And I'm from like rural Texas with a single mom who like grew up in the poverty line. So I was like, oh my God, I'm Pretty Woman, without the sex work.
Right.
But it was very sweet. But I say this to say I never believed, because my dad always had affairs on my mom, that it was possible or realistic to expect someone to not at least look the other way.
Yeah.
And I know people who really think that, right?
And you thought that like in high school?
I think, in high school.
Like when did you start like losing faith?
I have an older brother, so I used to hear what they would say, him and his friends would say about women.
Yeah.
And like, I was just like, oh, they really... And I know that there's men out there who respect all people, but that's just not, I'm from Texas. Like, we elect they all voted for Trump with the grab the pussy thing. I'm not surprised. I just hear how men talk about women and the objectification of women's bodies. And, I just feel like it was unrealistic. It was too much to ask.
Absolutely.
Right? Too much to ask. But I couldn't contend that thought with my jealousy.
Yeah.
With my ex. Because it was like, and what I've learned is that it was a true physiological response. My dad left my mom for another family. And so that was like a lot of trauma. And it was like, in a way, I was doing this like kind of trauma cycle of like every person's going to leave me for someone else, which I'm happy to say like I've done some work on. And that's what I mean where I'm like, oh, it wasn't in a healthy scenario for us to start this.
Okay.
And I wasn't in a place where I could like, you have to really be doing your work if you want to be open, poly, ethically non-monogamous, whatever your deal is, you got to do the work. And I was like, I'm reading, but it's like one thing to read and it's another thing to practice.
Another thing I hear people mention is that they'll sometimes feel bad when a partner's with somebody else and think that that's proof that this whole thing doesn't work. Were you always feeling just heart-wrenching reactions anytime he was with somebody else, or was it just at sometimes you were feeling a thing?
It was, and I don't want to villainize anybody, but it was like a physiological response of like my blood pressure is through the roof. But there were some things that were just like for example, we were doing long distance and I thought that there was this person who we were like going to see together and who he had been like going out with, but I didn't realize that he was like paying for an apartment for her that he had furnished. And so there were all of these things. And then it was like, I think the main thing is like being autonomous in your decisions and making them together. Because at that point, when we were polyamorous, this is why I call it polyshamorous, it was like the train was moving and I was running to catch up with it. And like I clung on, but I was like getting my legs broken as they're beating along the tracks.
Well, let's catch up to that in a moment. What was the beginning monogamous times like, and was everyone faithful during the monogamous trial period, I should say?
Well, it's interesting what people think of as faithful to me because, I think going back to like there's that sexiness. I've heard of people who have affairs that the attraction, when we were talking about your person who said you're like, oh, that's the lying is the whole. What did you say? What was it?
I mean, she didn't actually say that. I just thought it was a fun joke. But just the idea of like joke. That the deceit is part of the fun.
It is good. But I also think that's super accurate because they say people who are constantly doing those, like they're trying to trick people. They're addicted to the deceit. They're not addicted to necessarily cheating.
It's not the sex that they need to get more of. It's that they need that excitement. They need something.
The thrill.
Like it feels life. Yeah. And lying to someone, living a second life and trying to like manage all things can be exciting.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
do you feel like you're getting away with something, I guess? Or
I'm very honest in relationships, so I tend to not like do the cheating thing. So I don't know what that thrill is like. It sounds very anxiety inducing for me, like to lie and then keep up a lie and remember like what I said about that all sounds no thank you. I'd rather just like put it on the table and then talk about it.
And that's how I feel now, and that's how I am in my current relationship. That was a big thing that I got to in the current relationship I have, is that he has this relationship that he was dating a woman before me. We both met like kind of on the rebound, and they have a very special bond and connection, and he was always apologizing for it. And I'm like, I want to honor that. And if you guys can get back together, like all power for you. I just want to know, like I just want to be privy on it because I'm also very intuitive and I could tell when y'all are talking and when y'all aren't. And it makes me feel crazy. And that was like kind of like another thing of what I learned in my relationship with my ex. It's like, you have to be transparent. That's what I've learned. I'm like, I want you to be transparent and I'm going to honor that to you as well. But you got to tell me. Like that's my biggest thing.
Sorry to interrupt. Oh, so very rude of me. I want to tell you about something new here at the Man Whore Podcast. Our super free, super sex positive Discord server, The Champagne Room, is nothing new. Hundreds of whoreheads are in there chatting about life, love, sex toys, video games, politics, and sharing pictures of their cute pets. The Champagne Room is also a great place to connect with fellow fan whores to discuss specific Man Whore Podcast episodes. Starting this week, I'll be popping in mid-show to give you the week's episode icebreaker. Want to share your answer? Want to read or join the conversation? Then go to manwhorepod.com/Discord. Introduce yourself. Then pop over to the episode discussion channel. Of course, you don't have to answer the episode icebreaker to share your comments and thoughts about the guests or the topics of the episode, but this should help you if you have just so much to say and don't know where to start. Okay, by now, you've gone to manwhorepod.com/Discord while you've been listening to this luscious, unhydrated, manly voice over here. Maybe you download the Discord app on your mobile device. You're in the Champagne Room. You probably checked out the Selfies Only channel to see if there are any hotties in Fan Whore Nation. Spoiler alert, there are. And now you want this week's episode icebreaker. Okay, here you go. What is your opening up origin story? Pop into the episode discussion channel and tell us how you first opened up a relationship. Or, hey, you can tell us just your general thoughts about this week's guest, Kate Robards, the advice from Dr. Ina Park, or any of the topics we're covering on the show. One more time, visit manwhorepod.com/Discord and share your opening up origin story. Okay, now back to the show. How did y'all first approach not being monogamous anymore? Who came to who? What were the circumstances? What were those early discussions?
Me and my ex-husband?
Yeah.
I was living in the Bay Area, going to graduate school, studying literature and writing, reading the classics, Bovary by Madame Bovary by Marcel.
I don't even know if that's the title of the author.
Right, exactly. I'm like, I swear I read that book. God, I can't remember. In Search of Lost Time, The Ethical Slut, all of these classics, right?
That's great.
That's by like a Cal professor. So it was very much like a lot of my professors were, older and had been in this space where they were doing like a lifestyle like this for years, and I'm in the arts, so it was like always knowing people who would have multiple partners in a home on different floors, and like those situations were not uncommon. And so we were both, I'm like, my ex and I were so intellectual that we were like, oh, this is kind of what we've been talking about. Once again, I think like in hindsight, I just couldn't get there emotionally, like intellectually I could because of X, Y, and Z. Like we weren't on the same page. We weren't transparent. We weren't telling each other from both ends, me too, about why, like what was going on, because we were new to it and we were kids, and it was like we were just doing it all wrong. Like,
well, who's the first to approach the other?
He knew way more about it than I did.
Okay.
And I just came from this like provincial Christian upbringing where that was my first foray into it.
Right.
So it felt so far removed. And like, I talk about having a coming out party, like literally like having to, like, it was so terrifying to tell my friends and family, like, I'm polyamorous. Like they had no idea what that was.
Did y'all, I guess we'll stay on this one where the coming out talk, is that because there was another romantic partner you were going to need to introduce? Yeah. Because my stance is it's not really like family doesn't really need to know unless they have to like meet a person. Like, if you're not monogamous, like they don't need to know who you're fucking.
So my ex was like, I want her to come here, and
but back up to like how that got started. It was like, what was that first conversation of like, maybe we should, or would you be into? What was that first talk like? Because I know a lot of couples, they're even the ones who are thinking about it, they don't even know how to have that first talk.
I think ours was like, so this is not a good look, but it's the truth. It's the truth. So I always felt like there was like some infidelity on his part.
Okay.
But I hadn't like actually caught him.
Okay.
And so then I'm the kind of person like tit for tat. Like I said, I'm a little bratty. I'm like, oh, you wanna do that? I got you, and I'm gonna raise you one. So then I had a little moment of infidelity,
Okay.
and then I'm like really sloppy, and I left it on my phone because we were always looking for a threesome. So I was texting this person who I had hooked up with, and he knew that they existed in my life, and I was flirtatious with them, which was like also kind of hot for him because he was into the whole like it's hot that someone else wants to sleep with you vibe, which also I think is hot. And he was always like me trying to find a third, like for like like a chick, like the unicorn. And so he was always like, oh, swiping, and then you take over the conversation. But a lot of times he'd be like, oh, are you talking to them? And I would be talking to someone like this other person.
But you'd always be like, no, I'm talking to the unicorn. That's my cover.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I had left, and he was like genuinely, I think we were like genuinely not someone who was like snooping to catch somebody.
Yeah.
And then he was just like horny and curious, like, what's she been saying? And then he was like, oh, that's not what I was like trying to find.
Yeah.
And then he was just like, let's talk about and then I look at my phone. I was like, did you delete a message thread? He's like, I did. I didn't like it. And I was like, okay, do you want to talk about it? And he was like, well, I just want to say this is exactly what I've been wanting. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, open poly, this is it. And I was like, oh, fuck, like I deserve this. Mm-hmm. And so it was once again, like the train was already moving. And
Did you ever get confirmation about whether or not he was cheating?
I got confirmation on like my instinct. And I'm not somebody who, like I know I'm like, I know in my creaky old bones, but
you still don't know. No,
I didn't. Okay. I don't need to. Okay. But like, there's enough stuff in hindsight. But it's not like I was like, I'm gonna prove this. But something that did happen was like quickly after. He's like, I met someone. He's like, and she's my girlfriend. I'm like, Paramore. You mean Paramore? And I literally, it was like, whoa,
Paramore. Not Metamore.
So I didn't know this. So I was like, exactly, Metamore. We ended up getting a sex therapist, and the sex therapist was like, you're Metamore, Kate. She's actually your Metamore. And I was like, you mean Nemesis? Because there's so much language and lingo and like stuff that I hadn't caught up on.
I can't believe I just accidentally played your straight man in a bit.
Thank you. Walked right into it.
I really did.
I'm a writer, babe. I'm a writer. But it's true. It's like there's all that lingo, and then they were like fully in a relationship, and I was so mad about that like I was watching them fall in love, and like they were like working out together, and I was like happy for you two. I'm happy for you two. And I was becoming so ugly because like, you know, when you're bitter and mean, it makes you ugly. Mm-hmm. And she was like, you know, I have a whole, I'm like, you know, I was 30 and she was 22. And so she also reminded me a lot of myself. Like when he met her, she was a nanny, and she was like, anyway, it was like there were a lot of weird parallels to us. She's also in the arts. She's an actor. She's like,
so you don't want to feel like it's just, oh, so you're just fucking a younger me.
That's literally how I felt. Right. But I was like a younger, better me, which in some ways at least was comforting because I'm like, she goes to Yale, right? like she's like
I just never think that the 22-year. I never think the 22-year-old is better. I'll always take the 42-year-old version.
God bless
over the 22-year-old.
You know what? Somebody give him an award, all right?
I saw something. I forget if it was in one of your interviews or if it was like in a trailer I saw that you had up, and it was just like, you know, and anybody looking for the 30-year-old divorcee? I'm looking, I'm just like, I mean, yeah, me and probably most of Bushwick.
Now that I do that joke, I'm like, okay, I realize that is kind of hot. Like, because when I wrote that, my self-esteem was so low because, you know.
You thought you were washed up at 30.
I literally felt like, I was like, this is the oldest I will ever get in my entire life. And now I'm too old for my 31-year-old husband. And like, I now realize I was like, oh, that was a couple of years ago. Like, that is hot. I would fuck me. Like, you know, but confidence, loving yourself. I think a big thing for me that I also needed was like, I needed someone to love me so much, and it was insatiable. Mm-hmm. And I've really done work on trying to give that to myself, because you can never expect one person or any other person to give you everything you need.
Absolutely.
You know? And yet also, if I'm really saying it, I would love someone to give me everything.
To give you a what?
Everything I need. I'm like, I still have unrealistic expectations. No, but I'm working on it.
Independent of any of the poly stuff. If y'all all of his behavior in the relationship, even if it were monogamous, like, was that a fulfilling, giving you everything you needed? Or was he like not giving you enough attention? Or
there was a time when I felt that, but like I think the other thing, and this was really hurtful for me too, because we ended up all living together. That's how I came to New York. I came to New York with them. So like my first time in New York, I didn't even count because I was living with the two of them who were so in love, and like they're using my wedding presents. Like his family's rich, so I don't know if you know this, but rich people make donations for wedding presents. My family is so broke that like 4 of them would go in on a nice gift, and so this girl was like using all my wedding gifts. I'm like, stop. Like it was like just driving me crazy. And they had such a rapport, and me and him hadn't been living together because I was in grad school. He was working on the other side of the country, and it was just like so painful. And then at one point he said, and I remember at the time, it was like somebody had stabbed me in the heart. He was like, well, we're more sexually compatible than you and I are. Like we have more similar libidos.
Not how to say it, dude.
And I was like, I was so wounded. Now in hindsight, looking back, because I wanted to have sex way more than he did, I'm like, okay, that's probably true. Like that's actually, but I couldn't hear it at the time.
There's a thing he's trying to communicate, and there's a way better way to say that that's softer and more considerate for like how you felt.
Right.
So did you feel like you two were not as in love when you moved out here to New York?
Oh, we were so not as in love.
Right.
And so it was like not a good place to start. There was a point
where Poly's got nothing to do with it.
Poly has nothing to do with it. And there was a time when I was like, okay, if you want to try to like save this marriage, I can't try to do this with her still in the picture. And, you know, she was like, I'll go. And I was like, thank you. And he started crying and was like, I love you, both of you. And I was just like, I have to fucking leave. Like I can't, like if we can't resolve what we have and figure out what that is, I can't continue to watch y'all be so in love. And I like called his mom and I was like, I have to leave. And she goes, put him on the phone. She was like, that's your wife. You have to work this out. It's just literally like, it's such a rich people thing. She's like, I invested a lot into this relationship. She meant energy. She's like a social worker. She meant energy, but I also... And I was like, oh, he goes, Mom, I love them both. Like classic rich kid. He's like, I want both toys. I want both of them. And she goes, put Kate on the phone. And she was like, he's not for you. I'm so sorry. You're going to be fine. I'm so sorry. And it was so crazy because like the guy that I'm dating now, at one point early on when we were dating, because we had a threesome with one of his exes, which was like actually really fun. It was so fun because we like hooked up with her. We went back together to like his apartment, and she stayed in the hotel or whatever. And it was like, it was cute. It was sweet. It was cute. We kept it cute. And
didn't feel like a threat.
It didn't feel like a threat. It did, right, exactly. But then a while later, because they're still friends, and I actually love people who are still friends with their exes. You know, I think that's so important. They're still friends, and I was like, well, what's your dream vision for your life? And he was like, you know, I would have a home here and a home here. Like, you know, we're like fantasizing, and like it could be you and this other person, but without realizing it, my body is like convulsing as though I'm on an electric chair from
the other person is the ex or the ex-husband?
The other person is in the ex that we had the threesome with.
Right, okay.
And he didn't know like how traumatized I was from mine. And I didn't know either like how still traumatized I was from that experience, that I was like listening to it and just like shaking. And he goes, hey, like what's happening right now? Are you okay? And I was like, I'm sorry. I like never want to live with someone like a third person ever again. I was like, I have no interest in that. Like, I can't even. And he was like, okay, you just asked. He was like, I just thought it could be fun. And like, it was never brought up again. Right. And like,
didn't push it.
But it was like, I wasn't even aware how like physically repulsed I was by that idea for me, just having like been there, done that, until that happened. Cause I was like so disturbed from it. But then again, like, I mean, I have friends who are in that scenario and it works for them. So like different strokes for different folks.
Right.
But not for me.
But you are currently in a non-monogamous relationship.
Exactly.
You are, and so what is about this relationship? What is it about the way this dude's treating you that makes that possible for you? And that's different from whatever the ex-husband was like. Who is suspect to me because he's just like, I want my 22-year-old who's exactly like you, but 22. I'm just like, any man in his 30s who's insistent on romantically dating a 22-year-old, it's just always suspect to me.
It's so funny because so many of the guys that I've dated are like it's maybe they're 23, maybe they're 24, but like the human brain doesn't stop developing or till like 25.
Yeah.
That's when you are still technically a youth. And so it's so funny because these guys will be like, I mean, they're very mature for their age, or like, you know.
Anytime they say that, I'm just like,
And even me dating a 26-year-old, he's 27 now. I was like, oh, I get why people date people younger because you can manipulate them. I'm like, no, not that I was manipulated, but I just have so much more life experience, even after a couple of years, you know.
You have life experience and crazy girl eyes that like will make them do whatever the fuck you want.
Oh, I wish that was true. I need to learn to harness that power more. This is why I want to talk to
the femdoms.
The femdom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what is it about this one that like, what does he do for you that the other one didn't?
It's really, he works really, really hard to make sure that I feel like safe, to make sure I feel heard, to make sure we like talk about it. We talk about it with our friends. We're like, it's kind of a two-way street, as cheesy as that sounds. And it's like, you know, he does therapy about it. I do therapy. And then this relationship with this other person where part of it is like, I really love this guy. And I'm like, if there's a
The
world,
other person is
the girl he dated before me.
okay.
He dated many girls before me, but like, the one he dated right before me he was like in a long relationship with someone for a couple of years. And then he dated someone for a short amount of time. And then like they're still in each other's lives.
Sure.
Even though she doesn't want to be with him, there's like a tether between the two of them. And like as someone who loves him, I'm like, if you have a chance, go for it, right? And I think that that's like a really loving place to be, and vice versa, you know? And I think he's also an artist, and so much to me of being an artist is like being open to the endless possibility of life, as cheesy as that is.
Yeah.
And it's not to do something disrespectful, and it's not to do something carelessly where it's like, I'm going to go run away with this person.
It's
like,
just we're squeezing all the juice out of this thing while we're on this fucking
we want
rock.
the marrow,
right?
We want the bone marrow.
Yes, we want the marrow. We want it. It's I say that like for me, non-monogamy is not. It's not about the sex with other people. It's just like it's about the freedom to explore opportunities that present themselves. Like if I'm in a loving, committed relationship, can I be on apps more or less? Sure. Can I not look for fun, fling, random shit on Reddit? Sure. Like, but I still want to have the freedom to like explore opportunity and like have like some semblance of a sexual freedom. That's at least what it is for me. It's like not about like, oh, I need this much sex in a month. It's just, I just want to be able to like enjoy connections like with other people.
I love that. So that idea of enjoying connections is really where our conversations have stemmed from, because we're both artists and we like to like spark with people, whether or not it's like coming together over ideas, and even, you know, going to the idea of the sperm, like, you know, you were saying like it could be a big turnoff for a guy to get somebody pregnant, but from a biological standpoint, like, you know, the penis is shaped like that, as what is it, Jesse Barrett, as Jesse Baring said, to inseminate a woman. And the reason, you know, I'm sure you know about new relationship energy. So 6 months is like when a woman would get biologically pregnant. So like 6 months can be really intense. And then you have up to 2 years, which is the most intense during a relationship. So like that was because after 6 months, you would ideally, the chick would be pregnant. And then it's enough time for the person who impregnated her to stick around through the most dangerous time of their youth, so that there's an extra set of hands to like bring meat and bring food. And then after 2 years, they could leave and like father another child. And that's kind of that like biological, from what I've read, description of relationship energy, you know, from this very old primal reasoning. And so I am really big on, you know, like for me, I just know for me, even sometimes it's not even 6 months, but like I'll have a spark with someone and it's like I'll meet someone and it's electric and I'm like, whoa.
You got to remind yourself, be like, this is fun.
This is
Enjoy
really
the fun, but remember what it is right now.
This is really fun.
This is chemicals.
And yeah, it's chemicals. But also I want to enjoy them because I know after a while they're going to go away. And it's so, I don't think it's pessimistic of like, and love goes away because obviously it can deepen and trust can form and all these other things. But like, I really know so many couples who are like fully monogamous. And I've told them like, I'm ethically non-monogamous. And I'm saying this from a point where I'm way old. I'm like, I'm way older, but I'm older. I have more life experience. And I'm not like, oh my God, are you judging me? Even though I'm still like, I'm like, are you judging me?
But
not
like you can put on the face of like, this is me, deal with it. Yeah.
I mean, a little bit more. And part of it is like, I live in New York City and I'm like autonomous and, but I still want love and approval. But regardless, I'm like, I still want people to love me and not judge me. Going back to the idea of like, I'm like, what was I saying? I was like sparking.
Well, it was like, what I'm curious about was like, what, you were listing some things that this guy now, your boyfriend, does for you that your ex-husband didn't, that maybe had your ex-husband had the capacity to do for you, could have been a more loving husband and maybe had a more successful polyamorous situation. When you're saying he makes you feel safe and makes you feel heard, what does that look like? What are some examples of that?
Yeah, I will get to what made me feel safe, but I just remembered what I was going to say. So I was, my point to this was that I know so many people in monogamous relationships who are like, who I explain the whole ethical non-monogamy to. And it's like, we want to be open to that spark with someone new. And they were like, oh, my partner who I've dated for 7 years, he'll say we dated for 7 years, but the first 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, he was breaking up with me every 6 months to go out with someone new. And so it's funny that he's like, oh, they've been together for 7 months. And she's like, and I miss sparking with someone. And she's like, I actually think if we were both more open-minded, we could do something like that and still be with each other, because she's like, I haven't felt that like lightning bolt. And I've felt that recently. And like my partner that I'm dating has felt that recently. And it's cool for us to be like, go for that. Like, that's so fun for you. And also I'm going to see you like soon, right?
Right. We have plans on Thursday, and I know you have plans on Saturday with that whoever, and like I hope you have fun on the thing, because like I know it's fun when I spark up with someone new, so I want you to be able to enjoy that too. Also, and for me, only because I do feel safe and secure in the underlying relationship, that I can be cool with like, great, I hope you have a great threesome with that couple. But it's only because like, I know you're coming back to me. I know you love me and I know you want a future with me. Therefore, I'm cool with all this. I become less cool with all this when this underlying thing no longer feels secure.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's not about like getting a bunch of random sex. It's just about like enjoying these connections, but also like having this loving, secure commitment.
Attachment.
I want that person who, if the nukes go up, I got someone to be evaporated next to.
I love that. Yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, do you think the boyfriend now could potentially be that?
He could be. We'll see. But it's interesting because I met. Yeah, I don't know.
You just went from like he could be, but I don't know.
No, he could be. But it's funny because it's like I met someone who was saying, what you were saying. Like I met a guy who literally was like, every girl I go out with, I tell them like I'm ethically non-monogamous, and then without fail, they're just like, I want you all for myself, And I was like, I'm curious, does that happen to you a lot?
Well, that's no, for a few reasons. One, if it's a swiping situation, well, it's always in the bio because I'm getting out the way. You can self-select yourself out. Okay, I don't need to try to like trick you into falling for me and then I throw. No, like you're like, this is me. And you're going to know this about me. And if it's not for you, like, take care. There's a better match out there for you. But then also, like, I'm very publicly non-monogamous. I mean, like, my sex life is like my work. I'm very easily, you Google me, you either find an old guy in a suit, and that's my dad, or you find like
what does your dad do?
He's in like real estate development and shit. And we have the same name. That's why I'm a junior. So you're happy doing the non-monogamy now?
I am.
And what's changed about you that's making that feel okay?
I think I've really healed some of my I say I've healed some of my childhood trauma. I still have a lot to go on, but like being able to feel safe and being able to know, like, I can call a hard stop on this if I want to.
The
and
entire
get
thing
off.
or any one instance?
The entire thing. I'm literally saying pretty much what you're saying with like, it's on the table. Like, this is what I am. This is what I'm here for. And for me, it's like the ability to walk away is so much easier when I'm not married. Like, being married, and especially I wasn't anywhere near financially stable. This guy was supporting my lifestyle. His family was, at least. And I felt like, I was like, well, shit, I got to go along with this. And like, my whole family acted like this marriage was the best thing that would ever happen to me. Like,
Because of the money.
because of everything. Like, he was well educated, he was smart, he was nice, he talked pretty, right? Like, they were like, oh, this is amazing, like, your life is amazing. And so I was like, I can't fuck this up, like, whatever you want to do. And now it's like, I've been I rebuilt my life after destroying it from the ground up with, out the resources that I had. And so it's like, oh, if I'm dating someone and I don't like what they want in life, I can walk away. And that's really easy for me. And I think for me, the biggest problem I run into now is that my gut instinct is like, you know what, I'm going to leave. Like, I know it is really sad. I'm like, or you should leave, or I'm going to leave.
Well,
like,
how long have you been with the boyfriend?
I don't want to say how long because I don't know, and I don't want to be rude because he might also listen. But it's like long enough, like, and then there's also like some wiggle months. It's like under a year, but like 8 to 9 months.
It's a significant relationship, but it's not like a multi-year relationship.
Like like it's like been, it's like 8, 9, maybe even 10 months. But there were also times when we were first together where it was kind of like stop and go, because I was doing that thing where I'm like, hey, it was funny because after a couple of weeks, I was like, I want to date you. And he's like, I don't want to label anything. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to date this other person. He's like, no, I want to date you, So it was like a little touch and go, and he was healing from something. And I was healing from something.
So does this feel like this, does this feel sturdy now?
Yeah.
Okay.
It really does, and really supportive and really loving, and like, we have that ability to, like I said, spark with other people. I'm still so mad because I got kicked off of Tinder.
And you got kicked off Tinder too?
It was my favorite app ever. You got kicked off of Tinder?
Yeah, I don't even know why. They don't tell you. You just like log on one day and it doesn't let you.
I have an idea.
Yeah, you have an idea?
I told someone to fuck off and die.
Oh, that definitely was it. That was definitely it.
It was literally like right before I got kicked off. But
yeah, you're not allowed to tell people to die.
I said fuck off and die. And to be fair, he told me, he was like, congratulations on the weight loss. And my weight fluctuates a lot, but I was like, what are you talking about?
Like, he should fuck off and die. You're just not allowed to say that on Tinder.
He was negging me, and I go, what are you talking about? And he goes, well, the difference between this picture and this picture. And then I literally look at it, and it wasn't even, they were like very close together. But my friend, I was like, my thought was like, oh, my friend is a fashion designer, and she designs where you can like wear 0 through 8. So it's like the clothes are loose and flowy. And I was going to explain all that. And instead I was just like, fuck off and die.
Absolutely.
And then, so my friend is actually a girl I knew worked as a moderator on Tinder, where when people report them, they look at it. And one of the things they look at is, did this conversation escalate? And she was like, oh, with that scenario, that's exactly what happened. And the reason that you got kicked off was that he just said, congratulations. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he said, this photo to this photo, great job on the weight loss, And then I'm just like, fuck off and die.
Right.
So they didn't know my thought process. And
we all understand why you got there. I agree with you how you got there. Tinder's rules are you can't tell people to die that quickly.
And this was years ago.
Yeah. But you just make a Google Voice number, and then sign up with that Google Voice number, and then voila, you have a new account. Congratulations.
Oh my God.
I'll see you on Tinder. No.
Oh my God. It was the best.
Yeah. No, it's great. Also Field. I like Field. If you like some swiping.
Is it Feld?
Field, whatever. However you say it. That's definitely like the sexier
it's the trendy
Tinder.
one. That's the trendier one.
It's just the more,
but so many of my friends,
Tinder.
That's what they say. It's the kinkier Tinder, but like the most boring people I know are on that app.
Because they're trying to be exciting.
And good for them.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I think that like E&M is like so in the cultural zeitgeist now, and polyamory, and like
Everyone's giving it a try.
that.
Everyone's going to
I love
sex
that.
parties now. I think everyone's bi now. Everyone's going to sex parties now. People are trying non-monogamy.
it.
I think everyone's realizing, we don't know how much time we got.
I have a lot of gay friends in San Francisco, and one of them they organized an orgy, and it was like must be 5'7" and under to go to it.
A short king fest?
It was a short king fest, and they had my friend was like, oh yeah, I always have a rule: don't hog the swings, don't hog the sex swings, and he said like that there were so many sex swings because they like 5 people brought them because he was like you get like one whore in the sex swing all night and other people want to play, but he said he was so short and that they hung it too high and that he couldn't get out of it. And so he had signs that was like don't hog, it was his party, don't hog the sex swing, and he said he was just stuck in there until somebody came and he's like, can you help me?
And are sex parties like part of your repertoire, or was it just
They're
that one?
not, and there's a lot of people from my experience that I was like, I don't want to fuck that person. Like, I'm not really into that person. So what I want to do now is like, one of my friends who's ethically non-monogamous, and she's kind of like a mentor to me. She's so lovely and amazing. Yeah. She's also a therapist by trade, and she dates multiple people and like really loves multiple people at once and is really good to all of them and to herself. And we were talking about like doing a weekend away where it's not just like a party where like, you can have breakfast and dinner and hang out. Like we go to like Tahoe. I mean, she's in the Bay Area, so that's like a not undoable like couple road trip. Or like me and friends go to, upstate. And I was reading, I love John Early. Do you know who this is? The comedian.
Yeah.
He wrote he was interviewed in Interview magazine, Andy Warhol's magazine or whatever, and it was like how to throw a good party. And one of them was you want to create an environment which could facilitate group sex, something like that. And I was like, those are all the parties I want to go to anyway, where it's like at any second, like this could happen. It's just kind of fun.
It's just nice to know that I've been throwing Man-Whore-Con every year the right way, apparently. You don't throw an orgy, you just foster an environment where one could break out.
There you go.
Fantastic. Glad I'm doing something right. Kate, thank you so much for coming and sharing the sham and the polyshammer. But where can people go to find you, find your work, find what you're doing?
They should find me because I'm going to be doing a version, like some of the story. I'm going to be doing a solo show, hopefully at Union Hall. I'm waiting to hear back from them. I've retired polyamory because I'm over that.
Sure.
But it's going to be like inclusive of like that experience and some other stuff. But I have an email list that you can sign up. Stalk me. I'm at Kate Robards on all of the socials. And like if you holler at me, DM me or whatever, I respond. I'm like, I love my fans, all 10 of them.
I need all the attention, please. Yes.
Yeah.
People are like, it's like, am I being too available?
I missed a flight the other day, and they were like, I was trying to check in, and they were like, customer needs attention. And it was the best. They kept saying, oh, it's customer needs attention. So they kept going up the chain. You're like, we need a manager. So I had all of this attention. I was like, this is my dream. I love this.
I want to date all of you.
I love you all.
Well, everyone, go give her a follow. And Kate, thanks again for coming by.
Thank you so much.
Why don't you go ahead and say goodbye to everybody?
Bye, y'all.
If you enjoyed my chat with Kate, I've got a bonus episode coming out tomorrow exclusively on Patreon. All of my $5 and up fan whores are going to get a little cutting room floor action, some stories, some clips that didn't make the main episode. We kind of got all over the place. We ran over time, so there wasn't really time to like do a dedicated bonus ep, but there was so much, like we recorded like an hour and 20 minutes. You only heard like a little under an hour here. So, if you want some more, if you want the bonus, you got to go join my Patreon. You'll get access to that bonus episode at the $5 or higher up levels. And you know what? Not only will you get her bonus episode, you get access to over 200 bonus episodes of the Man Whore podcast. Most of your favorite guests have a bonus episode up on the bonus feed. Rachel Steele, Nina Hartley, Venus Cuckoldress herself, and she's a patron. Become a member today, support my work, gain access to more content at patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. If you don't already, make sure you're following me on Twitter and Instagram. Those are my places. I'm on the TikTok at the Billy Procida, but I'm figuring out what I can do there. But I'm mostly active on Twitter at the Billy Procida, Instagram at Billy is Procida. I'd love to hear what you thought about this week's episode. If you have a comment, a question, a criticism, you can send any and all of that over to manwhorepod@gmail.com. I used to say, if you got comments, questions, titty pictures, but now, unsolicited titty pictures. We're all about the gender equality these days, right? Well, unsolicited titty pictures, not always the best either. The best place to send your unsolicited titty pictures with a tip attached is at onlyfans.com/callmebilly. Let me be your wonderful, very attentive, very loving, very complimentary internet boyfriend. And boys and NBs and everybody else, hey, I'm straight, but my wallet is very bisexual. I'm happy to flirt with all of you over on my OnlyFans at Call Me Billy. Folks, turns out I need a new roommate. This sounds like the thing you'd put in the intro in the monologue, but I don't know why I'm putting it back here. My roommate dumped me this month. My ex dumped me last month. Starting to get really worried about my pot dealer. I might need a new number in April. I don't know. In case anyone has a good salary who doesn't own subwoofers and maybe enjoys a clothing optional household in Bushwick. Maybe you're thinking about moving. Hey, is it normal to solicit for roommates on a podcast? I don't know. It's probably not appropriate, but all the same, everybody, stay safe out there. Stay sane, and most importantly, stay slutty. Are you looking to start a podcast? Want to use audio as a marketing tool for your small business? Enjoy free credits when you use my promo code Billy at Libsyn.com. That's Libsyn, Libsyn.com, or click the link in the show notes.